We were arrested on Thursday, June 18th, 1964. We came to St. Augustine mainly because we could not stay away. We could not say no to Martin Luther King, whom we always respected and admired, and whose loyal friends we hope we shall be in the days to come. We could not pass by the opportunity to achieve a moral goal by moral means, a rare modern privilege, which has been the glory of the nonviolent struggle for civil rights. We came because we could not stand silently by our brother's blood. We had done that too many times before.
Welcome to the Rhythm of Life podcast. I'm Steve Ordauer. Today we're excited to present an interview with Rabbi ALLEN Secher. Allen marked his 90th birthday earlier this year. He's a rabbi, civil and human rights activist, radio host, television producer, actor, author, and public speaker. He was ordained in the early 1960s, and while serving as rabbi in Massapequa, New York, he became one of the freedom riders during the civil rights movement. Rabbi Secher joined other clergy members working with Dr. Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, Andrew Young, and others to fight segregation in Albany, Georgia, and St. Augustine, Florida. And in fact, the day after they demonstrated there, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In 1991, Rabbi Secher and his wife, Ina Albert, founded Makom Shalom, Chicago's first Jewish Renewal congregation, melding traditional and holistic paths, mysticism, meditation, and gender equality towards spiritual intimacy. Rabbi Secher is deeply committed to supporting interfaith couples and families and has officiated and co-officiated more than 2,000 weddings and other interfaith life cycle ceremonies. For many years, he and Father John Cusick served as advisors to the Jewish Catholic Dialogue Group of Chicago, and in 1993 the organization also founded the Chicago Interfaith Family School, which educates children and their parents in the traditions of Judaism and Christianity. Today, Allen continues to serve as one of the rabbis of the family school. We'll hear Allen in conversation with David Kovacs, who I produced and directed the documentary Leaps of Faiths with in 2019, which is an exploration of interfaith marriage and families.
Thank you, Steve, and we're so happy to be here on Rhythm of Life podcast with Rabbi ALLEN Secher, who actually was ordained, and I looked it up, 1962. That means you've been a rabbi, Allen, for 63 years, right?
Right. So, well, David, it is probably even more than that, 63 years, because throughout my life, my mother continued to say to me, you know, when you grow up, you can be anything you want to be, as long as it's a rabbi. Well, so I'm convinced when I popped out of the uterus that she already placed a tallis around my shoulder and said, Rabbi.
Well, new meaning to the term baby naming ceremony. Allen, it's been an incredible career for you. Congregations from the East Coast to the West Coast and Mexico, a long time in Chicago and a long time in Montana. And I thought what we would talk about today are three aspects of your career, one of which is fighting anti-Semitism. The other is civil rights and your role as a freedom rider. And the third is interfaith understanding. Does that sound like three areas we can get into?
We can get into it. Do we have 4 hours or so?
Oh, sure. Exactly. Now, you grew up in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and in Butler, and people will be familiar with Butler, Pennsylvania, because that's where the assassination attempt on Donald Trump took place last summer. But you probably weren't surprised that Butler, PA had people like that, right?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. It was a steel town. Butler was a steel town. No longer is, but it was a steel town. in the midst of coal miners on the edges. For me, it was not a good place to grow up. My parents loved it, but not me.
And why was that?
Well, I faced, from the time I was a little kid, I faced anti-Semitism. As a little kid, a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, every once in a while I got my head busted open from rocks thrown at me with the phrase "Jew bastard" on the other side of the rock. I felt this all through school, that yes, I had buddies, and I had buddies who didn't care. Didn't matter that I was Jewish. But on the other hand, I had schoolmates who were very sincere about not wanting to have anything to do with a Jew.
Well, you had an episode that I want you to share that happened in high school when you were on the golf team. You want to talk about that?
Yes. It was one of the defining moments of my life, David. I was a good golfer as a kid. That was how I was going to be a jock in high school, because the jocks were the grand heroes. The golf coach was a woman. Now, why was she the golf coach? Because she happened to belong to the country club, and she had a car that she could drive the guys. The country club where the team played its matches was no Jews allowed. And the country club had obviously said to her, that Jewish boy who's due to play, we won't have him. We can't have him.
Wow.
It just destroyed me.
It must have. It must have.
And I guess I can maybe tell this, and Steve will eliminate this, but a number of years later, a lot of years later, maybe 40 years or so later, they now had Jews belonging to the country club. So I went out there with a friend of mine. I went out to the club, and I pissed on the 18th green by way of expressing my just anger over the years. I've never gotten over it.
Well, and you must have felt angry when another incident happened, when you had appendicitis and you needed emergency hospitalization for that.
Yes,
and you could.
This was when I was 12. I was up in Conneaut Lake at a summering with my folks, and I suddenly got huge pains in the belly. And we got in the car. My mother raced me to the nearby big town, to Meadville, Pennsylvania, where, if memory serves me right, you went to school.
Allegheny College, right? Yeah.
So she raced me to the hospital, St. Anselm's or whatever it was. It was Saint something or other. And I was told when I got to the hospital that there were no doctors available to treat me. Not in the emergency room, not regular doctors, not the hospitalist, no doctors available to me. Why did I go down to the public hospital down the street? And then, of course, it was clear that at this Catholic hospital, I was being told, we don't treat Jews. This would have been probably, I'd say, just near after the close of the war.
Wow. So let's put a pin in that, because it's going to come up later when we talk about your extensive work with interfaith couples and families and Christians and Catholics and people of all faiths. From growing up in the anti-Semitic environment that you did to that, what a leap. But let's talk about your school at Brandeis, your time at Brandeis undergraduate before you went into seminary. You had an interesting experience as a chauffeur, right?
I'm glad you asked me because I love telling the story. I'll try to make it sort of brief. But yes, for 5 days in 1955, I was Eleanor Roosevelt's chauffeur.
Wow.
And it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. I picked her up in a fancy neighborhood. I begged the school, please let me do this, please. And I so begged that just to get rid of me, they said, okay, you can be her chauffeur. So I picked her up in a fancy neighborhood in Boston. And she walked out, it had an elevator, and she walked out of the elevator and immediately extended her hand and said to me, how do you do? I'm Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, as if I didn't know. And there was another lady with her. And so we walked to the car, and my car was a 6-year-old beat-up Chevy, a student car. It ran. So as we're walking to the car, I said to her, Mrs. Roosevelt, you're about to ride in the only car about which a song has been written. She said, oh, really? I said, yes, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And she chuckled. And we got to the car, and I didn't know what was proper. So I opened the back door and the front door. Her companion got in the back. Eleanor Roosevelt got in the front seat. And for 5 days, she always sat in the front seat. So that I became really not the chauffeur. I was the driver. Mm-hmm. And I was included in every conversation if there were other people in the car, and a number of times there were. Or when she and I were alone, she was at Brandeis to attend a meeting of the women's division of Brandeis, fundraisers. Mm-hmm. She had earlier, I believe, been on the board. And so we every journey that we took, both to Brandeis and back from Brandeis, and a couple of times there were at least two a day. I was a conversant. Goodness knows what we talked about. But as much as I could dream up and feel comfortable with. I mean, you sit with someone like that, you're in awe the whole time. I arrived back home in Butler, and there was already a note waiting for me, thanking me for what I had done with her during the time. It doesn't get any meaningful or memorable than that.
Well, you've had some other brushes with people of national significance, and I want to talk about your years in the civil rights movement, if we can do that. You had, I'll let you tell about it, but I'll just set it up by talking about your position as a rabbi in Massapequa, Long Island, in 1962, when the Southern Christian Leadership Conference asked you and a group of 53 rabbis and ministers from New York and Chicago to join Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, Ralph Abernathy, and others in Albany, Georgia, to demonstrate nonviolently for desegregation. So tell us about that experience and how formative that was in your life.
Very. I think, to go back a moment, is that the golf incident really matured that feeling of we the people. Okay. And that when the Southern Christian called, I had yet to do my first service in a new congregation in Massapequa. We had just moved there. The service was due to be in a week. And I hadn't been in the house we had rented any more than a couple of days. And the ask was, would I join fellow ministers, black and white, from New York and Chicago, and go to Albany, Georgia, where the attempt there was not just to desegregate like the school or the library. It was to desegregate everything in the town. And the king had already been jailed for trying that. But would we come and set up demonstrations in the main part of town? Sure, I said. I'll go. And we were to assemble the next day at a church in Harlem. We assembled with the number, this was a year after the first Freedom Rides. First of the Freedom Rides was 61. So we were assembled at the church, and then we were divided up into groups to drive there. The feeling was buses are really dangerous. Remember, they had burned out a number of buses the year before. So I got in the car with, I don't remember, there were 5 of us in the car to drive there. The other driver was a rabbi who was the chaplain at Yale at the time. And we were to drive to Albany, Georgia. The drive, I think, was a long drive. I don't remember how long, but it felt long. We arrived in Albany, Georgia, and immediately went to a black church where King and Abernathy and Young were carrying on a rally. Of the few pictures that I have from that time, I do have a picture of King speaking at that rally, and if you look real hard, you can see me in the clergy audience. But it was the kind of things that one was used to hearing from King by then. And then there was instructions from Abernathy and Young as to what to expect. And King was very clear about you don't fight back. This is passive resistance, because if you fight back, they've won. If you show them that you're not resisting, now you might get beaten, but you're later on we got instructions as to what happens when somebody tries to beat you. We were then taken after the rally to homes, to black homes, and stayed overnight in the black homes. We were welcomed like we were old buddies. The next day was a rally on the steps of City Hall, where we were told, dispatch, dispatch, and we carried on a prayer service. Dispatcher, you're going to get arrested. Dispatcher, you're going to get arrested. We did not dispatch, and we got arrested. we did something that day that it took like 24 hours for the cops to realize. We integrated the jail. They didn't know where to put us, so they put black and white together. The following day, when they realized what they had done, they separated us. And they took many of the white guys, maybe all of the white guys, to a jail in Baker County. Now, it was the kind of jail you see in rural movies. It was a jail with 2 cells. They were sort of attached. There were, I think, about 32 of us in a cell meant for 8 people.
Mm.
And the toilet and the sink didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you tried to flush the toilet, and you can't contain the natural rhythm of life for 24 hours, when you tried to flush the toilet, it backed up so that the swell of the garbage was well above our ankles.
Mm.
And so you had to try to sit up on some sort of bench without putting your feet in the junk.
Mm.
And
you were there for 6 days?
We were there for 6 days. We went on a hunger strike. We'd take water, but nothing else. We had all kinds of incidents. They threw a couple of drunk black guys into the cell with us, and from outside the cell shouted, "You love that white man? You love that white man? Go kiss that white man."
Mm.
Then at one point in the course of time, through the cell windows, they threw firecrackers.
Oh, man.
And our first feeling was, we're getting shot. We had agreed, the various ministers and rabbis had agreed that we would stay as long as we could. And I opted, I'll stay a week, the 1 day in Albany and the 6 days there. We were released after 6 days on bail. Okay. So, David, I'm still out on bail. With the hope that I'm not deported.
Yeah. Well, Allen, not only did you do this, but you went back 2 years later at the request of King and Abernathy and Young and others to demonstrate in St. Augustine, Florida.
Yes. And that in itself, that was something else, David. I was at a rabbi's convention in Atlantic City, and there was maybe 500 rabbis. I can tell this now, David, because I'm an old man, and what are they going to do with me?
Right.
Okay? So there were about 500 rabbis, and Martin Luther King had written a letter to a rabbi named Cy Dresner, who was the most arrested rabbi in the country at that time. And he was known as King's rabbi. And King asked for Cy Dresner to make an appeal for rabbis to come to St. Augustine, Florida. And they had a big problem of integrating the beach in St. Augustine. They separated the blacks and the whites. King had already been arrested for trying to integrate a restaurant. Could Dresner get some rabbis to come? And the minute he read the letter, I grabbed a piece of paper or something to write. because I was going around to all the rabbis at the group to say, we're planning on going tomorrow morning from Philadelphia to fly to St. Augustine. Come with us. David, I heard some of the most amazing excuses ever. I heard, well, no, I can't go. It's my wife's birthday on Tuesday. Or I have a board meeting on Thursday. And the best excuse I heard was, no, I can't go, but make sure that you know that I will preach about it on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling was, wait 1 minute. You're supposed to be there. You're supposed to sing the song and be the marcher. We only could get 16 rabbis out of like 500 and a layman to go.
And
so,
go ahead.
Keep going.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, and you went, and you got arrested and jailed again.
Right. We got arrested. It was the same story as in Albany. Oh, and by the way, we did succeed in Albany. Yeah, we did. They integrated the library. They took out all the tables so that you wouldn't be sitting at a table with a black. They left the chairs. That was it. All right. So, yes, we went to St. Augustine. And again, church service, church speeches, church explanation about what you should do if you're beaten and how to resist. Andrew Young, a couple of days before, had been beaten with the inch of his life by thugs, call them. After the explanation, the group had been mounting a rally parade for, I think, about a week, where you marched in twos from the church through the black neighborhood, through the white neighborhood, to the city square that had an old slave market. And so we were notified that in the course of the week previous, or the day previous, that someone had been shot while on the march. They weren't killed, but they were shot from somebody up a tree. And then they announced, okay, we're assembling the march. Everybody who's willing to go outside. So, of course, we went outside, and they lined up, and they put me in the front of the march. And they joined with me a young black girl, a girl probably in her mid-20s. Okay? And we were the two front of the line. There must have been 100 people on the march. So we started out holding hands and marching and singing songs. And David, it's the most scared I've ever been in my life, because it was the same route. Now, the National Guard had been called up, but a number of the National Guard were crackers too. Mm-hmm. So, especially going through the white neighborhood and underneath those trees. But obviously, I made it. I had to be here to talk to David Kovacs. Okay, so we marched through the white neighborhood to the slave market, and then back from the slave market. we were then, and I felt a sense of relief. We were then again housed in a black home, and it was, again, very welcomed. In fact, the couple in the black home gave up their bed so that Rabbi Mickey Sills and I could share their bed. The next day, we assembled at the Manson Motor Lodge. We divided into three groups. One group went to the local Woolworths, I think it was. One group went to the Manson Motor Lodge restaurant. And then there was a group of us that went to the parking lot of the Manson Motor Lodge. King was watching what went on because he had been arrested already. And if he got arrested a second time, they'd throw away the key. So he was watching. We moved in a circle and began a prayer service. Shortly after the service began, a car pulled up, and out of the car came 7 people in bathing suits, 7 kids. That is, kids, teenagers, and a few a little older. There were 5 blacks and 2 whites. And the kids ran through the parking lot and jumped over a low fence that separated the parking lot from the pool. And they jumped in the pool, all 7 of them, thus integrating the pool. And there were people in the pool because this was in June, June 19th, 18th and 19th. This would have been the 19th. There were whites in the pool who immediately exited. The manager of the Manson Motor Lodge was beside himself as to what to do. So he grabbed 2-gallon jugs of muriatic acid.
Right.
And he started pouring them in the pool. The courage of those 7 kids, they didn't budge. Now, he didn't know, and they didn't know, that this particular acid is, when it's diluted with water, is of no use. It just doesn't work. Kids didn't notice that. They stayed until a cop jumped into the lake, guns and all, and pushed them out.
Well, let's wrap up this segment. I just want to ask you, you've seen since the early 60s years of demonstrations in this country and people taking to the streets, and even up to the present day. What would you say to people today about the need to peacefully demonstrate in when they see injustice or things that they want to change?
King says, I don't remember the exact quote, but you got to be there. It's not, I see this all the time of people talking. And this is a terrible thing, this is a terrible thing. You have to put your body where your mind is. You have to say, I cannot stand this. And yes, you may get arrested. Okay? And also, you may get beaten. But that's the price you pay for saying we are a people who are together. Black, white, Jew, Catholic, It doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or whether you're some strange religion. It's all of us together. And my wife and I were part of the No Kings demonstration a couple weeks ago. We could not stay home. And so if you're thinking about do it. Just do it with the hope or the dream or the prayer that eventually your presence is going to make a difference. And it does.
Great words. We'll take a short break right now, and then we'll come back to talk about interfaith, your role in Jewish Christian, Jewish Catholic relations, and some personal thoughts as you reflect on a life beautifully lived. Let's take a break now. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
On The Rhythm of Life.
You're listening to the Rhythm of Life podcast, an interview with Rabbi ALLEN Secher. If this interview is compelling and providing something for you, please be sure to subscribe to our show, and ratings and reviews are really appreciated so other people can find out about the Rhythm of Life podcast. Enjoy the rest of the program.
And we're back. During the break, Alan, you picked up the letter that you and the other rabbis wrote from the St. Augustine jail, and you have an excerpt you want to share.
Yes. We wrote a thing called Why We Went. And here, it had another form. We wrote it at night, the night of the 18th, on the back of a KKK poster. Okay? And I want, it says everything we would want to say. And Andy Young had at one time said that he felt this letter was as important as King's letter from Birmingham jail. Okay? This is from the 19 of us. The 17 of us, I'm sorry. We came because we realized that injustice in St. Augustine, as anywhere else, diminishes the humanity of each of us. If St. Augustine is to be not only an ancient city, but also a great-hearted city, it will not happen until the raw hate, the ignorant prejudices, the unrecognized fears which now grip so many of its citizens are exorcised from its soul. We came then, not as tourists, but as one who quixotically thought we could add a bit to the healing process of America. We were arrested on Thursday, June 18th, 1964. We came to St. Augustine mainly because we could not stay away. We could not say no to Martin Luther King, whom we always respected and admired, and whose loyal friends we hope we shall be in the days to come. We could not pass by the opportunity to achieve a moral goal by moral means, a rare modern privilege, which has been the glory of the nonviolent struggle for civil rights. We came because we could not stand silently by our brother's blood. We had done that too many times before. And there's more to this. There's 2 pages of this, written in the middle of the night with a stub of a pencil.
Well, and your actions had results, because in 1964, for 8 months, Congress had struggled with President Lyndon Johnson about the Civil Rights Act. And the day after you were arrested, it passed. How did that make you feel?
Oh, like we had played a role in American history. And I still feel that way. It was a small role, but it was a role. And that more or less is from what you had said before, is you stand up because it's right. And Johnson, Lyndon Baines Johnson, was so moved by the pool scene and the acid that he pushed instantly to get that Civil Rights Act passed, and he succeeded. So,
well,
did it?
You did it, and you must have had some memories of Butler and growing up and discrimination where you were the target. You must have been feeling that in these experiences.
A little bit of triumph, yes.
Yeah.
All through high school, I felt this over and over again, where kids not being permitted to spend time with me, girls not being permitted to date. And so after St. Augustine, I've stayed at it.
Yes, you have.
And I'll go ahead.
Let's talk about how you've kind of broadened that into many years of your support of interfaith couples, Jewish, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Jewish, and anything, the support of couples and families, which really has flourished since you came to Chicago. Now, you came to Chicago in 1980 to be the communications director of the Chicago Board of Rabbis. And that's when I met you, because I was writing for The Magic Door. You became the producer of The Magic Door and a number of other TV shows. And that was a leap in your rabbinate to make it so visible in the media. But one of the strictures that you had working for the Federation and the Board of Rabbis was that you could not preside or co-officiate at Jewish Catholic or Jewish Christian weddings. Is that right?
That was correct. Let me back up, if I may. Okay. I had been performing interfaith weddings in California before I came here. And so that reputation, I guess, preceded me. I really wanted to produce television. Now, that was foremost in my mind. And so the stipulation of the job was, okay, but you may not do interfaith weddings. I could do them in an emergency.
Yes, and I would love to set this up with an excerpt from the film Leaps of Faith, which
Great.
Steve Ordauer and I co-produced and ran on public television. It's a history of, it's a look at interfaith relationships between Jews and Christians in all dimensions, in the dimension where one religion is chosen or no religion is chosen or two religions are chosen. And two of the most beautiful voices in this film are you and Father John Cusick in a dialogue that you had, and a series of experiences that you shared. This first one was how John met you. Let's listen to that.
I was scheduled to do a wedding at the Marriott on Michigan Avenue, and the rabbi punted, and we needed a fill-in rabbi. So they called Central Casting, and this guy named Allen Secher showed up.
Well, Central Casting brought Allen Secher and John Cusick together, and they did many, many weddings. How did that feel to find this priest that you could feel like you've known all your life?
If somebody had said to me, a priest one day will be one of your best buddies, my answer would have been, are you crazy? Okay. Many of the Catholic priests, the priests in Butler was preaching anti-Semitism from the pulpit. So why would I want But Cusick and I were on the same page about everything, including the Chicago Cubs. So Cusick and I, we bonded.
What would happen if we looked at life where no one had to be the enemy? Somebody doesn't have to be right, and therefore somebody has to be wrong. If we've done anything, and if I've learned anything, Allen, from you, it's not right versus wrong. It's, what do you see? How do you live? Let me tell you what I see, and let me tell you how I live.
It was the relationship here that said to me, you can play a role in lives that has meaning, and you can have a full, broader life as a result of your relationship with a Catholic. I make the statement often that Cusick and I were climbing the same mountain. We just took different paths. Okay? And that's how we can get along. At no time do I ever say with Cusick and the other priests who have become friends, at no time do I insist that they're wrong. Never. My insistence is, okay, you're right and I'm right. Let's go from there. So I don't question. I don't question one's faith. It might not be for me. Yes, I don't ever want to be a Catholic, but I sure can appreciate the faith of a Catholic.
Well, let's put ourselves back in time when you started doing these in Chicago and how things have changed. We'll go to another excerpt from Leaps of Faith now. When you and John talked about some of the family dynamics that came into play when a Jew marries a Christian and how the extended families look at that. Here it is.
The general standard 30 years ago was you sat Shiva, you declared them dead.
We saw those. When we began this 30 years ago, it was not as a diverse social, cultural world as it is today. You had two issues. The issue of a couple getting married and the issue of both sets of family who didn't know what this was all about.
Once upon a time, we dealt with a couple whose mothers on both sides were undergoing 5 days a week of therapy in order to handle it.
So, Allen, 5 days a week of therapy. When you found this out, you and John must have said, well, this will be an interesting wedding.
It was the Jewish mother. Interestingly so, they were from Dallas, I think, but the Jewish mother was seeing 5 different shrinks.
Wow.
Okay, and she came first to Cusick, not to me. She made and Cusick had said to her, "You got to go talk to the rabbi, not to me. You got to go talk to the rabbi." And the family dynamic then in most interfaith weddings is something to behold. When parents complained about my daughter is marrying a Catholic, I would say to them, "Do you like the guy?" "Oh, he's the best." "Will he make a good husband for your daughter?" "Oh, absolutely." "Then what's your problem?" Okay? It's what we find is that in Jewish weddings, they don't bother to talk about all the things that are diverse in their life. Instead, they go ahead and then suddenly they discover one is a Cubs fan, one is a White Sox fan, and they can't blend those two.
So how would you say things have changed over these years in terms of acceptance and
back
how couples approach marriage and find support?
Well, back when I started, it was still a pretty rare thing, interfaith marriage. It was present. I had aunts and uncles who were interfaith, but it was rare. But it's more and more now that there's no definitive no definitive separatists of couples. It's more usual, and parents are suddenly getting used to the idea. So 2 of your 5 kids marry interfaith, but what they need to discover, as you so well know, having founded the Catholic Jewish Dialogue Group, what they need to know is that many of these kids become stronger in their own faith rather than weaker. And that's an important thing to know.
So you and John and other priests and other rabbis have been challenged by couples to say, okay, you could do a wedding. What about welcoming a baby? What about a baby naming and baptism? What happens when kids grow up and rites of passage come into play, like First Communion or Bar and Bat Mitzvah? And you have had really deep experiences with all of those rites of passages, even up to and including funerals. So reflect for a moment on the whole life cycle and why it's so important that people have the support of clergy in these very, very powerful emotional moments.
In most cases, the Jewish kids go through bar and bar mitzvah, and that's the end. Goodbye. It's a pain. I don't want to do it. But you set up a situation where these couples could learn where their partner is coming from. That worked fine. That worked for a few years until the group came to John and I and said, we just had a baby. We want a baby naming ceremony. What? We want a baby naming. If you guys are willing to do interfaith weddings, well, why not other interfaith ceremonies? OMG. Okay. So John and I, and we remember this clearly, we drove out in the car together and we got to the house where this was to take place, and we're sitting in the car preparing. We did the world's longest baby naming ceremony ever. It was like an hour and 10 minutes. We threw in everything. And when it was finished, John and I got back in the car and we were hysteric over what we had done, and then determined to put together a ceremony that would honor both traditions and not dishonor them. So we put together, and then couples began to come to us to say, okay, the next step would be First Communion. That's an important life cycle. Gee, I don't know. First Communion is a communion. Well, we worked hard on that, and we came up with some symbols. For instance, the First Communion that John and I did was set in the form of a Seder, which was maybe the First Communion. And that what it was a definitive Catholic ceremony. but with a touch of Judaism, with a touch of the rabbi would put together something that fit for this. Okay, then they said bar mitzvah. What? Bar mitzvah? Well, same story. Now it's a definitive Jewish ceremony with a touch of Catholic. John and I have been easy to do all of these. And we've done, you're right, we've done some funerals.
Let's talk about the family school. For those who don't know about it, it's a religious school that is hosted at Old St. Pat's, but independently run by the families. It's a school where kids learn about Jewish traditions and Catholic and Christian traditions, and they learn them side by side as the parents teach the classes. And it is a school where the whole family learns, because the parents who grew up in perhaps a single religion have to reacquaint themselves with what they learned because they have to teach it. And when the family school came to you, Allen, and said, what do you think about having a school where kids learn two religions, what did you say?
That's the perfect lead-in, David. I said, you can't do it. You can't do it. Well, why, said you? I said, because statistics show the kids will be confused. Can you show me the statistics, Allen? Said you. I said, well, I could get them. I know one of the leading Jewish sociologists. I can get them. So I immediately got on the phone with a rabbi who's also a sociologist. And I said, we're thinking in Chicago of forming a school, a family school. And he said, you can't do it. You can't do it. Why can't I do it? Because statistics show. I said, well, would you show me the statistics? He couldn't do it. He couldn't. Somebody along the line had made up the story that statistics show, and it became a grand story. So if statistics can't show this is the normal growth from what we had been talking about for years. So I came back to you and said, okay, we can do it with one major proviso that you've just mentioned. The parents have to be part of the school. The parents have to be the teachers. Because you send a kid to Sunday school in probably both traditions, but certainly I can speak for Jewish. And the mother drives the kid, and the kid has to say, what the hell am I doing here? It's a beautiful day. I should be out playing. And I got to sit here for 2 hours with something I really don't care about, but my folks say I have to do it. Okay? And my dad's out golfing. I could be golfing with my dad. They pay no attention, and as I said earlier, bar mitzvah is over. And then the kid says, what do I need this madness for? I want a boogie on Sunday too. The family school has succeeded far beyond my dreams. Beyond my...
Let me ask you then, do you think that the family school and other initiatives of creating interfaith understanding, of which there are many all across the country, do you think that has a role in helping to fight anti-Semitism, which is so much a part of what you grew up with?
That great question. Okay, I think absolutely it plays a role, because the Catholic partner learns that the Jews ain't bad, learns that the Jews didn't kill Christ, learns that the Jews are not money grubbers, learns that he acquires a history that says the Jews are okay. And the Jewish partner learns the same thing. So it's a blend of tomorrows for the two of them. I have rarely, I've had some couples break up that never learned that. And that was too bad, but they just never learned it. I had one couple break up because the guy who was Jewish resented the crosses all over the household. It's a big step, David, in breaking it down. It doesn't work with some. It probably still doesn't work with my Butler, Pennsylvania people.
Well, let's, before we close, I want to ask you just some personal thoughts about your life and reflecting. You just had a 90th birthday. Your wife, Ina Albert, will be 90. Tell us about Ina and founding a congregation in Chicago, Makom Shalom, with her.
Very good. I think there needs to be a new Judaism, a brand new Judaism. But notice I said Judaism. I think the best self-help book ever written was the Bible. But it's a self-help. The person reading the Bible has to take what's there and integrate it. There's been a lot of new self-help since then, and a lot of things that help toward that. So Ina and I decided back in the late 80s, a group of people from the Catholic Jewish Dialogue Group said, we'd like services. Would you and Ina put together services? So we formed a congregation, and the essence of the congregation is that I'm the organizer. I did not preach, because preaching means you have answers. Okay? Be very aware of a minister or a priest or a rabbi who says, we must. We must means you must. I already am holy. Okay? But find the things that touch you and make them a part of community. So we did services in the round. Our music, by and large, was a jazz group. The sermons that I gave is, by and large, I would say, I came across this in the newspaper this week. And it's really quite moving. What do you think?
Well, I know that in talking to you that one of your goals, since you were growing up in Butler, was to counter the hurts. And it sounds like throughout your life, you have succeeded spectacularly. Rabbi Allen Secher, thank you for being with us, sharing your stories, and sharing your insights into a life well lived.
Thank you, David. And thank you for being my biographer. I've had a good time. I got to tell all my stories.
For Rhythm of Life podcast, this is David Kovacs with Allen Secher. Thanks to you, Steve Ordauer.
Thank you for tuning into the show. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe to hear more compelling episodes on Rhythm of Life, and keep an eye out for our upcoming series of how we as a society often incentivize all the wrong behavior here in the United States. We see this in the healthcare industry, the media, and in our educational systems, to name a few of the fields we will be covering. We will also be launching another podcast very soon called Ambiology that takes a look at the left-right political spectrum from a historical perspective. It will be a deep dive into this paradigm that is conventionally thought of as static, but has shifted significantly over time. Ambiology will also examine the significant role public relations, also known as propaganda, has played in shaping perspectives on critical issues in the country. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and review so more people can hear about us, and share about Rhythm of Life on social media, and like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Steve Ordauer.
This has been a Rhythm and Light production.